words of Jesus in red. This book gets a lot of red. Jesus does a lot of talking. And he's been walking with this group of guys. This was done back in those days. So there would be a rabbi, he was the teacher, and then he would have his students, and the students would follow the rabbi, and not necessarily follow the rabbi, but like spend all their time with the rabbi, learning what the rabbi had to teach them. And so these guys have been following Jesus. They've been sitting around Jesus, listening to Jesus teach us, like tell us, they have questions, they want to know things, they're like, this doesn't make sense, okay, but we know all these scriptures from way back. Tell us what this means. Tell us what that means. And so back in chapter 24 of Matthew, Jesus is in a conversation with those guys, and he makes a prediction that the temple, which is this beautiful temple that has this incredible long history. Before the physical building was built, they actually had these pieces that they wandered for 40 years in a desert, and they had these pieces that they would carry with them, and then they would assemble it, and then this was the holy place where God actually resided. It was this sacred place that God resided in, and that is where they went to pray. That is where they had very specific it was just so intricate and fascinating to me for the very first time in my life. That became fascinating to me in recent years as I really dug in and started studying it. And so in chapter 24, when Jesus says to them, like, this temple is going to be destroyed, they are like, that's crazy talk. Like, what? Like, no. Tell us what you mean by that. And he's not announcing this to, like, everybody. He's telling these guys. And he's telling them for a reason. So he asks them, when is this going to happen? And he answers them that it's going to happen, I think he said, within 40 years. And they know that he has come to Jerusalem for a purpose. He is announcing, he's announcing that he's this long-awaited Messiah. That these Jewish people have been waiting for this Messiah. And there's prophecies and predictions, and we talked about a lot of those at Christmas. How could these prophecies come true? Like, there's actual historical evidence that lines up with what's in the Bible. It's actually, there's a math calculation about, like, the statistical probability of 3 prophecies coming true, the 3 of the prophecies that came true. Like, just, it's this incredible number that just wouldn't happen, that this man would be born at this time in this place, and just these fascinating details. And so these guys have come to see all this and think, oh, yeah, this guy is the real deal. But they still have this picture in their head of what that means and what that's going to look like. Because these people had this picture that it was going to be very military, like he would overthrow the government, it would be very powerful, it would be this, desecration of Rome, because Rome's been oppressing them. And Jesus actually has come with this, like, kind of upside down message that actually is this message of humility and a message of serving and a message of, anyway, he's walking with these guys, and he's trying to tell them, like, this new way of living. So they're basically pushing him and saying, like, well, when are you going to tell them, like, when are you going to tell them that you're the Messiah? When is this all going to happen? When are you going to implode Rome? Like, when is this going to happen? And he just kind of, like, shrugs it off, like, I'm just, I don't know. And so they're in this kind of limbo place of knowing that this big thing is coming, or feeling like this is a big deal. We've been waiting a long time for this to happen. And Jesus is saying, like, you got to get ready. You need to be ready, and trying to show them and explain to them how to live so that they're ready. And really, he's trying to show these people who think that they're serving God that really they're not, and that they've completely missed the mark. They've made it all about works, and they've made it all about show, and really squandered the true message. So he's bringing a new upside down kingdom. You know, he had that line, the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. He's calling, anyway, so let me just get it. So this story, this message, the way that he does this is through these parables, which are like riddles. We have those like outside of the Bible too, often called folklore. There's a story about an emperor, the emperor's new clothes. Anybody know that story about the emperor's new clothes? Just in case there's someone, which is very possible, there's someone in the room who's like, I've heard it, I don't really remember it. So there was an emperor who's very showy and lavish and spends all his money on clothes. I didn't fully study this, so I hope I tell it right. These new guys come to town, and they are like, we have the most amazing clothes. Like, we are tailors, and they come in like full show. We are these tailors. We can make you the most amazing clothes. And foolish and ignorant people can't see them. Only brilliant, smart, amazing people can see them. No one else can see them. Just like if they're stupid and ignorant, they won't see them. So his whole court and the emperor, when presented with these clothes, go, wow, because they're so full of pride, right? They're so full of pride. They don't want to be seen as ignorant and stupid. And so they're like, those are gorgeous clothes. And then, long story short, he winds up parading through the town in his new clothes, but he's naked and everybody's laughing at him. It's a folklore tale that has deep meaning, like deep meaning. How important is it to that emperor that he be seen? Like, you know, he thinks these are like really important people traveled from afar, bringing the most high technology clothing, and he doesn't want to be seen as foolish. And so this is what Jesus does with his, in a little bit of a way. He tells these stories to his disciples. And the reason he tells them the way that he does, and actually, if you study smart things, it's a technique actually of if someone has a strong opposing view of yours, or if someone has like a deeply held belief or like value system, the most direct approach, like really coming in like bang and like coming at them with a truth that's different from their own truth, is not necessarily the most effective. It's shown that it's actually much more effective if you come from a roundabout sort of way and involve them in the thinking, in the you know, like just really engage them. And so that's what Jesus is doing. And if you are not a follower of Jesus, this parable is actually not really for you. This is a story. Jesus is sitting with his disciples, with his followers, people that have really, truly, they're in awe of this man. Like you are God. Like they have come to see you are God, and you are incredible. And we are going to leave everything, and we are going to follow you. We're going to turn our lives to follow you, and we want to hear what you have to say. Please teach us. And so if that's not you, that's totally fine. You are welcome here. Listen, you can learn things if you want to. But this is a story meant to impact followers of Jesus. And there's many of us in this room that our lives have just been so drastically changed by the message that Jesus came to bring. And so it starts in Matthew 25, verse 14. And this is a continuation of the last week, which was another parable. There's 3 in a row, kind of reinforcing the same thing. So he starts off in the New International Version, saying, again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. So in the New International, the New International Version calls it a bag of gold. In the school that I'm in, we are using the ESV. They call it talents, which is the original word for this very large sum of money, which is really funny because they didn't translate the word. They just kept the original word, which is talent. That's the original, that's what they called that sum of money. And so this is not, I just want to clear up any misconception. This is not talking about talent. This is not about a talent show. This is not about how great you can sing. Karen can hula hoop. She has mastered the hula hoop, but this is not about Karen's hula hoop mastery. And Bible nerds actually debate exactly how much money that would be. There's often debates in Bible land of those Bible people, the really smart ones. They don't agree on everything, and in my mind, that's okay. So some would say that it's a year's wages, some would say it's 5 years' wages, some would say it's 20 years' wages. In fact, most of what I found was like 20 years' wages, like that we need to understand that this is a massive amount of money. So let's notice first that the man going on the journey calls in his servants and he entrusts to them. So that means to assign the responsibility for doing something to someone or to put something into someone's care or protection. So 20 years worth of wages put into your protection or into your care, that is a large responsibility. Has anyone ever worked for someone who did that? Anyone, your boss was just like, hey, I'm going to pay you for 20 years of work, and I'm going to go. I'll be in Florida. And anyway, you can still get a hold of them, but okay, let's be somewhere where we can't get a hold of them, and they're just going to be away. And here's your 20 years worth of wages I'm entrusting to you. I worked for a guy for 15 years. He did not do that. He once gave me his bank card to pay for something, but I had to bring it back, and it was probably a Visa. I don't know that I had his PIN number. It was probably tap. I asked him, for advice about money. We talked about that kind of thing, but never once did he say, I'll be away for a while. Here, take care of my money. He didn't even really discuss his finances with me. I don't think I ever had a clue. Talked about investments in a general sense. I asked some advice, GICs, RRSPs, would I do this? What's this new tax-free savings account? I asked that kind of thing, but it was all very general. And I worked for that guy for a really long time. I felt like he really trusted me. So I'd like to, revisit this conversation with him and say, hey, how come you never, wages, 20 years wages? That would have been great. I could have done some good things with that. Could I have doubled it? I'm not really sure. Not sure. But this says that this master gave responsibility to each according to his ability. So that must mean that he knows his servants really well. And it doesn't sound to me like he's testing them or trying to set them up for failure. It says this whole entrusting, it's that's a big deal. I'm not going to risk that. I'm not going to risk, oops. It's not a test. One was given 5 bags of gold, one was given 2, and one was given 1, and then the master went on his journey. And so in this parable, as we unpack it, it was really felt to me like Jesus is saying to us that in the kingdom of God, everybody is responsible for something. And we don't all have equal responsibility. We are not all the same, but we are all expected to grow and to learn and to do something with what we've been given. And it was curious to me, and there's some, discussion around this about, that Jesus is talking about money. Because, if we're not talking about, our hula hoop talent or how well we can, do things, money has, this different thought to it. We all need money to live. We need money to pay our bills and have sustenance. If we have excess money, we get to make choices about what we do with it. Do we save it? Do we spend it? Do I buy things I need? Do I buy things I want? Can I be generous? Do I give money? Like that, those decisions are very telling of our character. What I do with my money is very telling of my character and what I value. You can look at our Visa bill, see what we value, right? There's a couple restaurants on there usually. That's changed a lot in the last couple weeks, but we really value eating out with people. That's just been something we've really valued for a long time. Money being, though, if we take it away a little bit from like the actual physicalness of money, it's a resource and it creates opportunities. And so I just thought that was a curious part of this, that none of us are the same. Jesus doesn't expect the same from each of us, but Jesus is saying here that our resources as followers of Jesus should be used for his kingdom. So the man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also, the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more, but the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. Feels like a ominous meeting, getting called into that one. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold, and see, I have received 5 more, gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things, and I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. And that word there, translated, because the Bible was not written in English, the word here is translated as happiness, but in the ESV it's translated as joy, which some say is a more accurate reflection of the original transcript, would be the word joy. The master invites him to come and share in his joy. The man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more. And his master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's joy. Happiness. It's the same message to both. He didn't say, he gave to each of them according to their ability, and is very pleased with each of them. He doesn't say to the one that, gets 2, you could have done better. Why didn't you work harder? You could have got 5. If you could get 5, you could. No. Joy. Come and share in my joy. And tells them they will be entrusted with more. It's participation. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. That guy has a very different picture of the master than the first 2. And so I thought we need to stop and ask ourselves, do we see evidence of what this guy is saying? Where is this, is the master hard from what we've read? Is the master unfair from what we've read? Have we seen that? Is that evidenced? The master didn't even compare the first man to the second man or the second man to the first man. Seems pretty fair to me. And then he says you'll be entrusted with more. It wasn't about a selfish. This isn't just about him. It's about what they're doing together. He invited both of the men to share in his joy. He saw potential in each of them, and he gave them each opportunity to learn and grow what they had been given, and he celebrated each of them for what they had become. The third servant is immediately on the defensive and immediately on the attack. And, I think he sees the master is successful. He profits from working hard, and he even profits from not working hard from what this third guy sees. Like harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. It's like looking at the success of others and living jealously of what they have, being green with envy because they have what I don't have. And this guy, it's not like he tried and failed. Like he literally did not even try whatsoever. There was no effort put in, like none whatsoever. He buried it and he walked away. And that idea that the master was gone for a really long time, what was that guy doing? Like, where were you? Wait, if you work for this guy, like, where were you? What were you doing? But he is just really defensive when the master comes back, and very accusing. And, John would say, that guy probably needs a P-test. Just had to throw that in there so that we had the P-test 2 weeks in a row, but sorry. The master replied, and this is where this just gets a little bit tough to read. You wicked, lazy servant, so you knew that I harvested where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. If he was really afraid of the master, that would have been a simple solution. I'm not afraid of the master. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them, and throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And because I was taught about an angry, heavy-handed God most of my life, this is a tough passage for me to read, because I interpreted it like, well, if I just don't do good enough, if I don't work hard enough, off I go. But I feel like it's really about more than that. That the third man has a dialogue going on. He's living in a story that isn't reality. The story that he's been telling himself, like, he just can't get out of it. He's stuck. He's got blinders on. And, I can't stop, I can't help asking, man, what got that guy so angry? Why? What gets me so angry? What gets me feeling put out? Did he see the first servant get 5 bags of, and if we're talking 20 years salary, so 1 bag of gold being 20 years salary, we're talking enormous sums of money, right? Enormous, huge sums of money. 5 bags of gold for that first guy. And so when I get my measly 20 years worth of salary, am I looking over there at well, he got 100 years worth of salary. What? Huh. Am I already put out? Have you ever, this part, it reminded me of finding out that someone else made more money than I did. And I was pretty convinced that I worked a lot harder than they did. And that did not make me work harder. That did not. I completely ignored the fact that I had 0 education and the other person had letters and significant education. Just completely ignored that. Because I just got into this little pity party, self-pity mode of like, oh, man, it would have been better not to know. I don't want to know this. Ugh. Like, I work through my lunch. I take extra. Anyway, that was a moment that I had to get out of that. I can't live in that place. That is a dark place to live. There was opportunity for this man to see how the master treated the first two. And he could have said like, oh shoot, I got this all wrong. Oh man. Like, they're sharing in his joy. I want to share in his joy. And he could have come at it very different into that conversation. I think I made a mistake. Buried the bag. I thought this was, I didn't know there was like sharing of joy. I thought this was just, got it all wrong. Hey, no, he totally did not do that. Instead, he pointed the finger and said, you are a hard, angry, mean, selfish guy. And I think really what this parable, what Jesus is saying is, there's lots of us, for whatever reason, we just don't see the true picture of who Jesus is. The Bible, the kingdom of God. We have, whether it's from our upbringing, whether it's from messages that we've just heard, we've never really looked into it ourselves, we just heard, we just don't see this like clear picture of who God is. And, Karen and I saw an example of that. We've been talking about the book of Jonah, which took everything in me not to pull the entire book of Jonah into this talk, but I'm already over my time. And Karen sent me a song from when we were kids, and like the whole song is about like how God was so angry, and so Jonah ran and hid. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I just read the book of Jonah. Like, that is not what this book is about. Like, it's not about an angry God hunting down Jonah. And then poor Jonah got swallowed by a whale. Like, no, Jonah got swallowed by a whale to save his life. Like, it actually saved his life. It didn't, it wasn't this torment. We often don't see clearly. And I think that Jesus really wanted them to see that turning their back, living with my blinders on, and choosing to stay in this place of self-protection, it leads to darkness. It really does lead to darkness. And, the biggest kind of thought that came up to me is, like, I think Jesus wants us to know, if you're going to follow me, this is the real deal. Like, know the truth. Know the truth, because when you don't know the truth, a lot of really bad things can happen. Christians who profess to follow Jesus do a lot of really terrible things. We have residential schools in this country that were run by the churches, operated by Christians, by people who profess to love God. That I believe is just one example of why Jesus was like so clear. Take that bag of gold from him. Throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Because there are many of us who profess to follow Jesus who don't do it well. We are living from a story that is not the real story of who Jesus is, that is not the real story of the Bible. And I mean, it's one thing to bury a bag of gold and walk away and forget about it, but it's a whole other thing when you're causing harm to other people. That's a whole other ball game. And Jesus is not overlooking it. He is not going to overlook that. I had notes because I needed to recover from that, so let me just find my spot, because I knew I would go off. the invitation to those who follow Jesus, to those of us who have turned our lives, and we see that something here is to fully participate in the kingdom. He wants to activate us. He wants to grow us. He has things he wants to teach us. We have old ideas and old value systems that have to be shaken up, that need to be recreated. He wants to engage us in being a blessing to the world around us. That's the purpose. That's why he came. That we would be a people that would follow him to be a blessing to the world around us. And there are moments in this past week where that is not what I have been. And if we take a moment and ask God, he will show us. We like to do that if you're in the 12-step program, if you're in LifeLab. We teach in LifeLab towards the end. There's an evening review and a morning review. You know, we want to fully participate with Jesus, and we want to bring these things up on a regular basis. You know, did I miss an invitation this week from God? Thinking that it was something that it wasn't? Do I need an awakening to the true story that you have me in, God? Do I need an awakening to the true story of who you are? And I would say, you know, what we do on Sunday mornings isn't going to did not sufficiently get me out of the story that I was in. Did not give me the full picture of who God was and how I needed to live. It didn't give me everything that I needed to learn to be who God really wanted me to be. And I sat for a long time, you know, buried gold in I don't know what I was doing. I thought I was doing good things. I really did. But studying has changed everything. Studying this Bible, and I know that it's weird and like, you know, not a lot of your friends are studying Hebrew text, ancient Israel, and it's a lot of confusing things, but there's really great resources out there. Number one that we talk about on a fairly regular basis is the Pause app, which is a daily thing that is just this invitation into seeing Jesus a new way and maybe understanding what he wants in my life. But, you know, maybe you just need to fully engage into the learning and growth opportunities that you have right now. Maybe, because that's a choice, to multiply the bags of gold or to bury it. I can be in a place where I am burying, but it definitely looks like I'm going through the motions, thinking that I've got it all figured out. Or am I allowing Jesus to show me where I have not quite gotten it right, where I have distorted ideas, where I've been shaped by what I've grown up in, or what I've, you know, just stories or resentments or fears. Am I willing to invite Jesus to awaken me to his spiritual reality, spiritual truths? So God, I just thank you right now for your word, the really fun parts and the harder parts. And we do want to be a people who are a blessing to others, not causing harm, not wasting what we've been given, not doing nothing